How goes it all? It's Jeff, and I hope that there was plenty of love disc to go around. The RBTs continue following their lead to Lakawa. The scenery here stands out a bit more than Area Zero. I mean, there are 2 whole rainbows. After dropping them off in Cold Kamuri, Rayquaza's taken off, and perhaps to meet up with Lucius. This place has a very old-timey feel. Bronze colors, the lack of buildings you'd expect to see in a city. The residents got a vintage style too. While trekking, they overhear a boy tripping about saying that Black Rayquaza, since an old lady has prophesied that disaster will follow. Reminds me of the Absol superstition about bringing disaster, when in reality it's a warning. Bringing disaster and predicting disaster are different coins. The boy's frightened Pokemon took off, but there are no myths there, it was just a scaredy bat. Our crew explains they've been traveling with the Black Rayquaza to Lakawa, but this man's unfamiliar, which is odd considering it's just a mountain hike away. Yuha then tries to kick them out of town, claiming they brought disaster along with Rayquaza. Of course, Roy takes that jab at his tent partner to heart. As much of a utopia as this is, you can see why Yuha wants to protect the peace. And it's not his fault his dad didn't raise him to be considerate. Turns out the old woman's old enough to potentially have known Lucius, so Freed wants to chat. Seems like this elder woman discipline is her role in town, otherwise I'd question how often Yuha's dad is bringing strangers into his house. Freed sends the kids off to entertain themselves, which gives us a peek of town. All the people and Mons working in harmony. It's serene until shrieks start bellowing from the dark. The group is brave heading into this cave to investigate, but they do got their Croco lamp. Kinda love when Mons get used for mundane tasks like this. They're just little buddies. Inside, they bump into Yuha, who found his Noibat, and some Vibrava. So many good cave-dwelling Pokemon these days. I remember when all trainers had was a Zubat and a Dream. Freed does meet up with the old lady, and I'll admit they don't make aging look appealing. She mumbles so much she needs a translator, though her reaction time's still sharp when she gets word of Goth Rayquaza. Evidently, great-grandmother saw it near the mountain when she was 3. If you take her at her word, that's an impeccable memory. I don't even remember being alive at age 3. Though, it looks like she is willing to spill the tea to Gentleman Freed. Turns out, she just needed her dentures. That's her equivalent of flipping the cat back. At that time, there was a huge explosion, which I'm guessing is from when Lucius got sealed. The area where it happened is now called the place where heaven and earth meet. Maybe because of the unnatural disaster that occurred. I mean, it does sound intense enough to imprint on a toddler's memory. After 3 days of darkness, a wounded man with snatched hair made it into town. Described as a scholar, it fits Gibeon's bill. So, even if the Loquium strengthened him, he didn't make it out unscathed. Still such intense buildup. Gita challenges them for entry into Area Zero, Rayquaza's alleged to bring peril, and now this woman's cautioning Freed about even going near the area. The kids got away, but Yuha's still holding a grudge. I like how feisty Roy is, but Liko de-escalates. Maybe using Yuha's name brought a sense of familiarity. Yuha was bulling around in the cave searching for Noibat till they got attacked. He claims all this misfortune is due to Rayquaza. Any more of this and he'll be like the boy who cried Lycanroc. Every inconvenience can't be the dragon's fault. So unfortunately, the only exit is through the swarm. Nice to see Liko's faith in them. This trio may have the strongest group dynamic of any series. Not necessarily the best, but they are definitely a unit. She tries asking nicely, but that's no good. Plan B had me pleasantly surprised to see the other Mons back out. Speaking of being a unit, the kids do share one brain cell. Dot busts out her starter, they all bring out their starters. At least the others got some slight XP. Motivated by the trio, Yuha and his Noibat step up. He clears a path with a super effective Dragon Claw, and I'll welcome any variety we get outside the starters. With that, the group's made it outside too. Plus, Yuha's earned some Roy-spect. He'd been training the move inside that cave, which is likely what set the Vibrava off. Coming to that realization, Yuha takes accountability, even owns up for his rudeness earlier. If his disaster wasn't Rayquaza's fault, maybe this myth is a bit misleading. He also picked up on the trio synergy, taking that as inspiration for his partnership. I could get that. I think these three do a great job of getting back up, which is pretty strong and cool. Always leave it to a disaster to bring people together. Freed gives a ring and he's got some intel. On a rare occasion, the explorers near got caught snooping. Curious they're hanging around here since Freed's pieced together Gibeon's living in this town. Makes sense for accessible Loquium access, and the remote work means Gibeon doesn't need to physically be at Exceed. Laka was pointed to be at the summit of the mountain, too high in elevation for the brave Olivine, meaning we get the return of the Winter Fits. They are struggling a bit to make the other RBTs relevant. Realistically, Kamuri didn't even need the kids there. Freed got all the crucial information solo. You know, I went mountain hiking myself last week, and I feel Dot's pain. No cold tolerance, though I do wonder why Hatchram couldn't confusion their way up or over to the base Liko spotted. What's sweet though is that Terapagos can just summon the other heroes. He actually has different cries for all their names, just like Ash's Pikachu did with their companions. After being mostly idle, the heroes get to be MVPs. Arboliva's isn't flashy or anything, just gives them a lift. Less exciting starting than the others for sure. They get to the water, and you can tell where this is going. Pagogo calls Lapras, who's willing to give them a ride. Actually, this all reminds me of Kamuri. Watching the humans and Mons be in harmony with each other, no battles, just using their strengths to benefit one another. Understanding Pokemon and what they offer do feel like the hallmarks of a Pokemon master. It's an expertise we know Lucius specialized in, so maybe he did claim the title. It'd certainly be possible with this team of powerhouses to overcome these obstacles. They make it so high up, they begin to pierce the clouds. Dang, Lucius should have taught Moltres Defog. Finally, the crews arrive to a literal cliffhanger. I think this episode was alright. Yuha's portion is kinda gonna feel like a time killer if it doesn't amount to anything later. I suppose it could tie into Horizon's aspect of not taking things at face value. For example, how the explorers are antagonists, but they're not all necessarily villains. Some are just misguided. From what the old woman said, I'd be curious to see the life Gibeon built for himself here. Who helped him build this base, and honestly, how did he afford it? Most importantly, the group's nearing Lakawa, a place with so much mystique, even the locals are unfamiliar. It was a treat how they got there too. It gave us a glimpse of how Lucius's Mons may have operated as a team on their voyage. That was the real highlight, but otherwise this episode felt pretty average, so I would give it a C.